Welcome to the Aero GS channel. I'm your host, Corey Bartolotti. In today's video, we're going to be talking all about the big box store corrugated pipe. That's right, the big box store black corrugated pipe. We're going to be going over how to build a system using this pipe if you do decide to use this pipe. Now, for residential use, I would not recommend using this pipe. I would recommend using a corrugated pipe that is built specifically for residential use if you are going to go with a corrugated system. But if you do decide to use the big box store black corrugated pipe, I'm going to be giving you some tips, tricks, and ways to design your system so that it will perform its best. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so to start off, we have a little experiment that we're going to be doing. We have a clear corrugated pipe, and I'm comparing it to one of the ADS corrugated pipes. The ridges are a little bit smaller on the clear one, but we're gonna have to go ahead and just make do with this because this is the only clear one that I can find online. So the clear is just so we can see the debris going through the pipe. And what I wanna try to see is how the debris moves through the ridges and valleys of this pipe in this simple experiment. So we're gonna pack a bunch of dirt and grass clippings, tree seeds, and there's also some pea stone gravel mixed in with this. And we're going to start off with a light rain, and we're going to slowly increase the pressure on the garden hose until it is a pretty heavy rain to see this debris wash through the line. Now, from what I've noticed, whenever I camera snake these corrugated lines, is the ones that have proper and adequate fall to them, they typically don't hold any debris or sediment or dirt. Now, in a light rainstorm, debris and dirt is going to stay in the pipe, and the water is going to just kind of go over that dirt and continue to flow out. And that would be like a low flow application. So as you can see right now, I'm kind of walking with this light rain that we're trying to emulate here with the garden hose. And, you know, the water's moving through the pipe, even with all that crap in it. And you can see the water's pretty dirty, so it is picking up sand. It is moving some dirt, and we're gonna slowly start to increase the pressure on the hose. That way we can simulate a heavier and heavier rain. Now, once you start seeing the water pick up in volume here at the outfall, you will see more and more debris get carried with the water. So the whole thing with corrugated pipe, the ridges and valleys create turbulence. I do believe this, and I have seen it. Now, typically the systems tend to fail 8 times out of 10 because of either A, the material that's being used, or B, the installer doesn't know what they're doing and they improperly install the system. So you can see the water has definitely increased here now, and there's debris. All that debris is flowing through the system. Now, granted, I put this on a pretty heavy slope here, so because I wanted to make sure we had good fall on a pipe. That way I can simulate and show that the debris does move through the line as long as you have good fall on your pipe and a good slope. You will clear that pipe out of debris once a heavy rain actually hits. Now you can see I picked up some of the pea stone and the grass clippings that were in there, but I mean, it's a good flow of water just coming from a garden hose. And on a heavy rain event, there would be even more water flowing through this line. And as you can see, the entire line is actually free and clear of debris. All right, guys, so I'm gonna go ahead and give you the best tricks and tips on building with this material from the big box stores. If you are going to build a system out of this corrugated pipe, there are a lot of things that you need to know, and there's certain ways you need to do things so you can have the best probability of success. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we're gonna start off with some ground rules that you never wanna break, okay? These are fundamental for having any type of good success with these systems in the long term. You're gonna wanna follow these ground rules. So first things first, these two pipes here are different. This is perforated drain tile. This has knife cut 360 degrees around the whole pipe. So this would be your French drain pipe. This is what you would use for French drains. This one, on the other hand, has no slots, has no knife cut, no holes, no nothing in the pipe. This is just solid pipe. So when you're working with this pipe, if you are simply moving gutter water, you do not want to use any kind of perforated pipe for moving gutter water. If the water is coming from a catch basin, if it's coming from a gutter downspout, any kind of channel drain, anything like that, you do not want to use perforated pipe. You want to make sure that that water is caught and put into a solid pipe. That way, any kind of debris and contaminants that get into your system, they do not get into your French drain pipe with slotted holes in it and clog it up. Because whenever you build a French drain, if you connect a gutter to that French drain or a catch basin or anything like that, you want to make sure that it's connected farther down the line when the line turns into solid pipe and is no longer perforated pipe, because you want those contaminants to flow downhill, not uphill, because then it's going to be flowing through your French drain and it's going to clog the holes, it's going to clog the perforations in the French drain pipe, and your French drain is going to then fail. So you want to always make sure that that type of water, debris, sediment, shingle gravel, goes into a solid pipe, not a French drain pipe. So that's your first rule, is to make sure that you're using the right type of pipe on what the application calls for. Second most fundamental rule when building with this material, anytime you're connecting a lateral, an additional line into your main line, use a Y fitting, not a T fitting. I have gone into depth on why to use a Y fitting and not a T fitting in another video, and I will link that in the description below so you can watch that video if you're interested. But to make a long story short, a Y fitting allows water to flow into your main line smoothly instead of just coming and slamming to a stop and then having to start its flow all over again. So I see this a lot in the drainage industry, guys using T fittings to connect laterals in. Just stay away from that. Do not use T fittings, use a Y fitting whenever you're connecting a lateral in with this material. Third very important rule, tile tape. You're going to want to use a good tile tape on any place in this pipe that has a joint. Any connection, you need to tile tape it. The number one way systems fail is roots entering the line. Once a root gets into that line, that's that. It's going to start growing through the entire line, and if it's not thoroughly cleaned out all the time, the root is going to turn into a huge root system, and it's going to clog the line, and the system is going to fail. So I'm going to show you here how to properly tile tape a fitting to a piece of corrugated pipe. It's easy. You cut the pipe down to whatever size you need it. You snap it in place until it won't push any further, and you have a good connection. You take your tile tape. Let's see if I can find the seam here. You take your tile tape and you start in the middle from the hub to the pipe. Put the tile tape on. If you're working in a trench, you can lift this up out of the trench to make it a little easier on you, and you just go ahead and you just wrap that tile tape like so. And you want to get a few good wraps on this. So, and this is a lot of times, this is why people don't want to use this tile tape, because one, this is extra time and effort to do this, and two, it costs more money because you got to buy the actual tile tape. And you don't want to use duct tape, and you don't want to use electrical tape. You want to make sure you actually use a good PVC tile tape. And when you're wrapping this, you want to go over the hub and you want to go over the pipe. And that's probably at least a good 2 to 3 inches right there that I'm working this tape in. So here's a close-up of the tile taped fitting and piece of pipe that I just did, and you can see about how far I went on either end. I went the length of the whole entire hub and about 3 corrugations down on the actual pipe itself. Using this tile tape is very important. Any water that's going to leak out of this seam, if you just push this pipe into this hub and leave it and not tile tape it, the water is going to leak out of the seam, and roots that are growing in the vicinity are going to find that water. And as soon as they start growing into that seam and get into your system, that's it. They're going to want the water and nutrients that are in here. Tree roots, shrub roots, they sniff water out, they find it, and they get into things that have water and that hold water, because that's how they live, that's how they survive. So tile taping is going to make your system last just that much longer, and it's going to keep these joints from leaking, and it's going to keep roots out of your system, which is very important with this pipe. Fourth rule when working with this type of material, the coupling that you use, it definitely makes a difference and it matters. So I have 3 different types of couplings here for you. We have an exterior solid coupling. This one's a little bit cheaper. We have another exterior bell coupling. This one is a lot more durable, better quality. And we have an interior coupling that does not belong in yard drainage. These belong on the farm fields. So when the big tillers are pulling thousands and thousands of feet of pipe and putting them into the ground with their big machine, these are used so it doesn't get hung up on the tilling machine. Whereas if they were to be using bell couplings to connect those feet together, this can make a snag point on the outside of the pipe, which can hang up on their machine. So they opt for using these. Don't use these in residential yard drainage. All this does is restrict the inner diameter of the pipe and restricts the flow, and it creates 2 additional snag points on the inside of the pipe where you don't want the snag points, especially in residential yard drainage. So in residential yard drainage, you want to stick to using an exterior coupling, and I would opt for the bell looking style over the flat one, because this one is just I mean, I'm sure you pop it together with 2 pieces of pipe, you tile tape the crap out of it, it'll probably be all right. But I don't know, I opt for this one just because the construction on it is better. So if I was to ever use one, I would be using this one. So that's going to be the 4th important rule. All right, so let's go ahead and let's talk about this actual material here and this specific drain tile, this pipe. So the whole myth about corrugated pipes not moving water due to the ridges in it, that's a whole myth. It's actually not true. So these ridges, they will move water just fine, especially in a heavy rainstorm where there's a lot of water being dumped into the system. This pipe is going to move water through it. It's going to move debris through it as well. These ridges, they create what is called turbulence. That turbulence, as the water is going over each ridge, it kicks. So it's almost like, think of like ocean waves. As the waves are breaking, they're moving debris, they're moving seashells, sand, seaweed, trash, like they're pushing stuff onto the shore. This is kind of the same concept. As the water goes over each one of these ridges, it's moving debris. It's stirring up sediment, it's stirring up debris. It is pushing it through the line. So the pipe will move water efficiently, it will move debris efficiently. The reason this pipe fails so often than not is, well, number one is due to the material it's made out of. This is really, it's not the best material for yard drainage because this pipe is buried so shallow to the surface. It needs to be buried a lot deeper because it's made for agriculture fields. It's made to be buried a lot deeper. So because of the material, that is the number one reason why it fails, is because it does crush a lot easier when it's close to the surface. And when big tree roots and plant roots start to wrap around this pipe over time, they slowly crush it down. And one of the biggest, weakest points on this pipe, if you want to bring the camera on in here, you can see this seam runs the entire length of this pipe. So in the manufacturing process of this pipe, when this pipe is pulled through the machine that's creating it, it gets heat welded together right here where there's that seam. And there's a seam just like it on the other side. So you have two seams, and these seams are weak points in this pipe. So whenever you're building with this pipe and you're building a system out of it, it might be tedious, but I would recommend make sure these seams are not facing up and the other one is not facing down, because that's going to create pressure point on those seams. When the dirt, rocks, garbage, whatever is put back on top of it here is going to create a pressure point right on this seam. And that is where it's probably going to want to fail at when it does finally crush, is on these seams. Instead, try to put these seams on the sides, so the seams will be facing on the insides of the trench. So when you throw your dirt and your material back on top, it's not pressing down on these seams. So that is a very important thing with this pipe. The other thing that's important is this pipe, it has to have slope on it. I cannot stress that enough. This pipe has to have slope. If this pipe is level, it is not going to perform nearly as good. Stuff is going to want to get caught in the ridges and valleys. It has to have slope to this pipe. This pipe cannot be back sloped either. If it's back sloped, that's going to create a huge problem as well. If your trench isn't leveled, sloping in the proper direction, say there's a belly in the trench, anywhere this pipe goes like that and bellies in your trench, it's going to create a huge choke point in that pipe, and that's going to be a failure point as well in that pipe. And it's going to get clogged because all the sediment, shingle, gravel, dirt, whatever gets in there is going to settle in that belly. So those are very important things to remember when you are building with this pipe. All right, so one of the final things I'm going to talk about with this material, with this pipe, is if you are using the perforated versions of this to build a French drain, if you're building a French drain out of it, there are some important things to know when using this for a French drain. So number one, you want to wrap the entire system with a good drainage fabric, a good non-woven geotextile fabric. There are loads of these on the market, so you have to make sure that you're getting the right one. Now, what happens if you don't wrap this entire system with that fabric? Basically, over time, the tree roots are going to sniff out the French drain. It's inevitable. It's going to happen with any type of French drain, geofabric or not. Tree roots are going to start to grow in it. It's just the way it works. But with the difference is with the geofabric is the tree roots can only go so far through that geofabric, and once they get into the stone and into the pipe, there's too much air during the dry season for those roots to continue to grow, to get into the pipe and really grow throughout it to clog it up. Basically, what happens is because you have a soil separator, which is your geotextile fabric, keeping the soil out of the stone from mixing with the stone, because over time, the soil will migrate back into the stone. After years and years, it will get back in there. And when that happens, you cannot move air anymore through that system. Those roots are not going to dry out, and they're going to continue to grow, and they're going to infiltrate the system, and they're going to make the system fail. So you have to use a good geotextile fabric, regardless if you're working with this type of material or not. So make sure you line your trench with a geofabric, you put your pipe on the bottom of the trench, and you fill it with stone, and then you stitch that fabric up. That way it's a contained system. Nothing's getting in there except for subsurface water. So that's the first thing. Now, this pipe for a French drain, I mean, it's one of those things where I feel like over time, the stone is going to want to start to crush this, especially if it's an area that's traveled a lot, if it's being walked on, like it's a walkway or a path on the side of someone's home. You know, I feel like the rocks are going to want to, dent this pipe and push in on it, but I think it would hold up, decently well for a while. But the geofabric is the number one most important thing. I see these pipes being put in the ground with just a sock on them. For residential drainage, that just doesn't work, because what happens is the tree roots, shrub roots, they find that pipe, they find that it has water in the pipe still, and they start to grow right through that sock, and they get into that pipe, and your system now has a time limit, and it's going to fail eventually. So I would stay away from socked pipes. And there's another product, which is a peanut pipe, which is basically this perforated pipe with packing peanuts around it and a drainage cloth that holds it all together. I would stay away from that as well, because those peanuts automatically raise the pipe about an inch or so in your trench, and that's all the amount of space you need for an inch or so of water to sit in the bottom of your trench. and roots are going to be immediately sniffing that out and growing in that, and they will grow right through that peanut pipe and into your system. And because there's a bed of peanut pipe underneath, that's a reservoir of water underneath that those roots can constantly feed on, so they never can dry out. They never have a chance to dry out and die, so they're just going to keep growing, and they'll grow through the pipe. So you want to stay away from that as well. The best way to build a French drain with this is, like I've already stated earlier, dig your trench, line it with a good geotextile fabric, put the pipe on the bottom, fill it with stone, stitch it up. You're going to have the best results if you do it this way. All right, so the final thing that I want to talk about when working with this pipe is always try to make one good solid run with this pipe whenever possible. So meaning they sell it in 10-foot sections, but then they also sell it in 50-foot rolls and 100-foot rolls. I would buy the 50 and the 100-foot rolls depending on the application and how far of a distance I'm going, and try to keep one solid run of pipe as long as possible before getting to a joint. Because obviously the less joints you have, the less seams, the better, because that's less chance for failure, less chance for tree roots to access the system. So always try to have one length of pipe whenever possible when working with this material, or any corrugated material for matter of fact. So if you're residential market, you want to use a corrugated pipe like this. Ideally, this is what you really want to use. Yes, the cost is a little bit more, but to put something in the ground that I know is not going to fail anytime soon, at least not in my lifetime, so I'm not going to have to worry about it, I would go with the FDM, the French Drain Man, high octane corrugated pipe. He makes a slotted version, and he also makes a solid version. So this pipe, the material is a lot stronger, it's a lot tougher, and this is going to hold up way better underground in residential settings than, you know, your agriculture big box store corrugated pipe is going to. Because once again, I've already said it, this pipe, it's not that this is a bad pipe, it's just being used for the wrong application. So instead of using it for the wrong application, you should use the right pipe for the right application and keep this where it belongs, which is in the agriculture fields. But if you are going to build with this pipe, if you do choose to build with this pipe, just follow these tips when building that system, and I guarantee you're going to have much more success with your system lasting and not having to pay these maintenance fees to have somebody come there and snake the line out or jet the line or anything like that. You know, you're going to have to maintenance your system, but this is going to help ensure that the maintenance is as minimal as it can possibly be.
All right, so the very last thing I'm going to be showing you guys is a recent camera snake that we did. So we're at the beginning of the run right now. We're probably about 10 to 15 feet in, and this is a corrugated system, you know, big box store, black corrugated pipe. And this system was installed, and the discharge is straight piped right into a retention pond. So there's no pop-up emitter. I mean, it's the best discharge you can have on a corrugated line. But this line is failing, and it is failing in multiple places of the pipe. So as you can see right now, you see roots growing in along the bottom of the pipe. The dirt and sediment that you see, that is the bottom, and the empty portion at the top, that is the top. So I have the camera facing upright right now. And as we keep going down this corrugated line, you'll be able to catch glimpses of that seam that I was talking about earlier in this video, and the seam is at the top, and you'll see some sections that have actually collapsed due to either roots wrapping around the pipe and crushing it, or just the weight of the dirt and other things on top of the ground that are making it collapse. But that seam is a big culprit for this pipe when it does collapse. Now, you can see the buildup of sediment is pretty extensive, and now we've gotten to the first major collapse in this pipe, and I have to force the camera snake to get around that. But in a minute here, we're not going to be able to go much further because the pipe is just collapsing in several places, and I am pretty sure that this is due to the tree roots that are wrapping around it, because it runs through a good section of palm trees. And that is more than likely the cause of this collapse and this failure in this pipe. And so we do these camera inspections all the time, and this is probably what we see about 85% of the time. You know, the other percent of the time, You can tell when the system was properly installed because there will not be this much debris and sediment resting anywhere in the line, such as in bellies. You will not see roots coming in at the joints, probably because tile tape was used, and instead of T's, we will see Y's as we're going down the main line. So that usually tells me that the installer knew what he was doing. And I mean, here's the thing, even if you install one of these systems, the problem is the material. You know, the big box stores used to carry a better material. This pipe actually used to be made out of a better material that the big box stores would get, but that is no longer the case now. They have actually made them thinner. So now the agricultural version is the better version, but you cannot get those at the big box stores. You have to go to farm stores, you have to go to plumbing supply stores, you have to go to other places to get that specific one. So ADS does make a really good corrugated pipe, but you just have to go through other avenues to get it. The French drain man pipe for residential use is by far the best one. So if you are in a northern climate where you need high quality HDPE pipe, definitely go with the FDM system, because it will not fail you in a northern climate. Now, if you are in the Sunshine State, Florida, then you can use PVC SDR35, or you could use the corrugated French drain man pipe. You can use any of it because we don't experience freezes and thaws, so we can get away with it. But if you live up north, definitely go with a high quality HDPE pipe. You will not regret it. So we hope you enjoyed this video and that you learned something here today. And if you did, give us a like. It helps the channel out. And until that next educational video, this is AeroGS signing off.